up in Mount Vernon, I think, was somewhat typical of rural America, a sense of neighborliness, small town community. As a kid, I used to ride ponies almost every day in the summer. I used to go to the community swimming pool. My family, extended family, were basically farmers, and so we spent a lot of time doing farm-related things. So that's sort of the typical rural childhood type stuff, with one major exception that I always sort of stood out as different and other.
It's hard to explain when you're the only black person, you're one of a kind, and that's not easy. This is why it makes it easy for me to work with my students, because I know exactly the way they feel. And as I have gotten older, let's say, then at some point I have to say that that's enough. I've run my race. God has been good, given me the opportunity. Now it's time for me to go walk a day in my shoes, if you will, and then you'll find it a very different kind of experience that if nothing else, I will share.
In Mount Vernon, my safe space was just my own circle of friends. So all of us were kind of not really fitting in with other people in our high school or in Mount Vernon in general. You know, it was hard for me to separate out being this sort of artistic, outcasty person from being a black person or from being a woman. But that's kind of how I felt I had to do to exist in Mount Vernon. Yeah, feeling safe in Mount Vernon was always, it still feels unsafe to me. I mean, I'll be honest, Mount Vernon church and my family, and that's it.
Mount Calvary Baptist Church was the church that I grew up in. I was eventually baptized at the Mount Calvary Baptist Church. My grandfather, the Reverend Samuel Sheffield, was a Baptist minister. I can recall attending his church and having to sit in the front row because my grandfather insisted that his grandchildren sit in the front row. As a child, I couldn't relate to what I thought was a very stiff, sort of dry, until the preacher started working it up to, here's going to be the big ending. But it was not interesting to me, but the music was almost always interesting.
The Holy Spirit was telling me we need to knock on some more doors around here in this community. Amen. Remember that one man was saying this church is in the worst community in this city, in Knox County, where we at. But God can take the worst area and he can make it the best area. He sent me here. He sent me here to Knox County. And it's the best county. It's the best county in the world because he sent me here. Amen.
For us, we're always thinking about how to win souls, how to get people to come, the message that we have to preach. So it's very hands-on, very involved right now.
Yeah, well, historically, black churches, as I said, ministered not just to the spiritual needs, but also sometimes the physical and economic needs of the community.
We get to meet a lot of people. We do windows, gutters, chimneys, and you meet all those people. And any event that we do at the church, like Martin Luther King, a block party for Jesus, all over Knox County. There's over 100 churches when we came here. They start, but a lot of them, they don't last that long.
I think the demise of the AME Church, the first black church in Knox County, had a tremendous impact upon the local black community. I think as a collective, we were really very hurt by it because of its status as this sort of icon, being the very first black institution in the county.
Why did we go to Mount Calvary? Why did, by the time it was the 70s and 80s, like the churches in Mount Vernon were integrated. You didn't have to go to the black churches.
For me, as a black kid living in a predominantly white rural area, the time that I saw black people was on Sunday. And when I went to church, most of the black community was going to be at that church. And so this sense of now belonging occurred probably only at church in Mount Vernon, Ohio, because there were other black people.
It was a defining moment for me as a child in my 4th grade class when we were studying Ohio history, Mount Vernon history specifically. They came to the whole thing about Dan Emmett, and I raised my hand in class and I told my teacher that he didn't actually write that song. It was somebody in our black community who wrote it, the Snowden family. My teacher said to me, "How dare you tell a lie in my class?"
We studied this book by Howard and Jude Sachs, way up north of Dixie. I did a lot of prayerful and careful thought about it and came up with this idea of having what we now call overcoming racism classes. And I talked to some other churches in town, and we started reading books in a book study group, and then we would have a panel discussion in the middle of it or at the end of it where we would talk about racism. And just understanding that this fellow that's being lifted up in this town is problematic came to a head there.
We've had an opportunity to put on, to identify that and then to begin to address it through a panel discussion. But we want to be an organization, along with overcoming, to teach and to support and to advocate for those who are on the one hand learning what it's like to be around people different than they are, but also deal with any issues, incidents that may arise as well. That's been an amazing experience, but now we want to go a step further and be about action.
Part of me is very grateful to have somebody like Scott, who it's not so personal for him because he's not from Mount Vernon and he's a white man and his experience is different. I just come across as the angry black woman.
The town is moving away from Dan Emmett Festival. They named it after him, and the next year they will no longer be naming it after him.
I've lasted long enough to maybe see some real changes, and I've instituted some things with colleagues and even students. I mean, it's great to see some changes come along.
I've always said I'm appreciative of the fact that I've learned something about folks that I knew nothing about growing up here. And that yes, we should honor Martin Luther King Jr., and yes, Rosa Parks is important, and yes, Harriet Tubman is important. Those are all really great figures. But it also says something to small town America, is that you don't have anybody worth commemorating. And I've come to realize that we really do have some really important people who inspired or supported or encouraged many of us. So there are and have been people who are important even if they aren't celebrity, even if they aren't nationally known, even if they haven't done things that other people would refer to as courageous or inspiring. They're still part of a community and they've made that community exist.